Hey modders, Rad Reg again. Just want to do a quick overview of all the components you're going to need to do your mod from beginning to end. Again, all these part numbers as well as sources for these is outlined in your actual tutorial. It's also on the checklist we have, so you can tick off each mark, make sure you have everything in hand before you get started. So the first ingredient to our component sauce, our concoction here for our mod, is very obvious, and that is basically an Xbox 360 wireless controller. So you need one of these because without it you can't make a rapid fire controller. So we want to use a standard one from Microsoft, not a third-party controller made by somebody else. So again, the stock controller is made by Microsoft. It can be new or used, depending on whether or not you're using a controller that you've been playing with for a few months and you're now ready to modify it. Again, that comes with a battery pack and batteries. The next thing we're going to need is the interface circuit board. So this is actually a custom piece from supermods.com. We've designed this specifically for modifying Xbox 360 controllers, so it is a custom board. So you're going to need one of these. Basically, we give you the source files on how to order this from a PWB company, and also alternate sources for buying this so that you can complete your mod. So after that, we're going to need some 30 gauge wrapping wire. They call this wrapping wire, but it's basically just a very fine wire that we're going to use to do all of our electrical connections. And the reason why it's good that it's fine wire is that it will get in all those really tight places inside the controller without getting pinched or bent or broken. Also, we got soldering flux. Basically, this is just a rosin soldering flux. The reason why you want this, again, we list this as optional in both areas, but really it's important for making sure you get good heat transfer to some of the critical components so you have a very quick solder joint. Things like LEDs and that are very heat sensitive, so this just helps with the thermal transfer and keeping you from damaging the components on your board. Okay, next thing we're going to need is actually a 1/8 inch stereo jack. So basically it looks something like this. It's got a jam nut on here for going through the bottom of the controller and being screwed on to hold it in place. And again, it's a 3-prong 1/8 inch stereo jack. So we're going to be using that as well for programming our controller. Okay, next thing we need is basically an NPN transistor. So the reason we need this is if we have a matrix controller. There's two different kinds of controllers. There's CG and matrix, okay? The tutorial tells you how to differentiate between the two, but if you have a matrix controller, you're going to need two extra components that you're going to buy. One is an NPN transistor, which you should be seeing a picture of right now because I don't have one in hand. And also a 1.8 k ohm resistor, so that's basically a standard carbon film resistor. Again, part numbers and sources for all these are in the tutorial. Alright, you also need a tactile switch. Basically this is just a open tact switch that's actually a single momentary tact switch which closes the circuit when it's actually pushed in. It looks something like this. It has 5 legs on it. 4 of the legs are actually electrical in nature. The 5th one is for ground or basically to hold it in place. But again, this is just a simple switch that when you push it in, you can actually manipulate the functions of your mod chip so that your mod can be interactive. Alright, so there's some other resistors you're going to need that both controller mods are going to need. And these are basically SMT resistors, surface mount technology type. They're actually fit specifically for this interface controller board that we designed for you. And they'll come on a piece of tape like this here. There's a bunch of them on this. Each of these little black dots is actually a resistor. You're actually only going to need a handful of these to complete your mod. You're going to need 2 10 k ohm resistors, 1 22 k ohm resistor, a 330 ohm resistor, and 1 k ohm resistor. So in total you'll have 5 resistors, surface mount technology resistors, that you'll be soldering to this interface controller board. Okay, the next thing we're going to need is basically our Pickaxe chip. It's an 08M chip from Pickaxe. It's just an 8-pin chip. You're going to need this. This is basically the brains and basically the heart behind the entire mod. And this is what actually does all of our electrical signals and really tricks the controller into thinking you're pulling the trigger faster than you really do. I actually have it inserted into it right now, but at the base of this you'll also see an 8-pin dip socket. So basically this is just a socket that the chip actually sits into, so you don't have to solder directly to the chip, and that will actually fit right into the interface controller board. You'll also need your solder, of course, to make any solder connections. Again, it's just standard rosin core solder. And last but not least, this is a very important thing, we also need our Pickaxe programming cable. So this is what we basically use to go from USB over to our stereo jack to interface with the microcontroller and reprogram it for different games that we might be playing. So again, if you kind of gather up all these components, make sure you check it all off on your checklist and you have everything ready to go, you'll be able to do your mod from beginning to end without any issues following the tutorial that you'll download here shortly. This is Rad Reg again, signing out. Hopefully your mod goes well. Make sure you gather all your parts.